A quiet 11-year-old boy vanished on his short walk home from school, his lunch untouched, his route ordinary, and his name quickly buried in silence. For years, officials pointed fingers in every direction but their own, while a tunnel that never existed on any map hid a secret no one was meant to find. 9 years later, a city clerk noticed a missing line on a blueprint and cracked open the first clue to a truth buried in concrete. This is the story of how a forgotten child forced a city to face what it paved over, and why justice, even delayed, still speaks through the cracks. At 3:11 p.m. on Thursday, October 9th, 2014, 11-year-old Miguel Sanchez stepped out the side doors of Langston Elementary School in San Pedro, California. The sky was a soft blue, just under 74 degrees, with a faint breeze from the west. Miguel wore his gray and red hoodie, khaki shorts, and blue Puma sneakers, standard for a fall afternoon in southern LA County. He wasn't in a rush. Friends say he usually lingered to finish a juice box or read comics he borrowed from the library. That Thursday, however, he appeared focused, backpack properly zipped, no sign of distraction. His intended route home was routine, 0.7 miles via Glen Hill Avenue, lined with palm trees and single-story bungalows. By 3:23 p.m., Miguel passed the corner store, where the owner, Mrs. Ortez, saw him pause, glance at the newspaper rack, and keep walking. "I said hi," she told detectives later. He waved, normal as ever. Miguel never made it home, 5:58 p.m. The first alarm his mother, Rosa Sanchez, called the school at 3:58. Miguel usually arrived home no later than 3:40. There had been no traffic, no rain, and no playdate planned. A few minutes later, she called his friend Jordan's family, then the school again. Then 911, transcript, Los Angeles County 911, dispatch date, OCT 9, 2014, time 4:11 p.m. Operator, 911, what's your emergency? Caller, Rosa Sanchez. Hi, my son never came home. He should have been back an hour ago. Operator, how old is your son? Caller, he's 11. Miguel Sanchez. He walks from Langston Elementary. It's only 7 blocks. Operator, has this happened before? Caller, never. He's not the type to wander. Operator, we'll dispatch officers. Stay by your phone. Units were dispatched from LAPD Harbor Division at 4:16 p.m. Patrol vehicle DAR 5C31 began canvassing from Glen Hill and Elmhurst, proceeding east. By 5:02 p.m., school staff, parents, and neighbors were out walking Miguel's route. They called his name, knocked on doors. Some yelled into alleyways, others checked backyards. But the boy was simply gone. Microcliff. No video footage officers began requesting security camera footage from homes and businesses along Miguel's walk. By 6:40 p.m., 6 properties had handed over DVRs. Shockingly, Miguel appeared on none of them, not even the store where Mrs. Ortez said she saw him. 7:13 p.m. Search grid established. The initial search grid, labeled Zone A, extended 3 blocks north and 4 blocks east of Langston Elementary. K-9 units from Long Beach arrived by 7:45 p.m., sniffing Miguel's backpack scent from a spare shirt Rosa provided. But the trail stopped cold at the corner of Glen Hill and Drew Court, a cul-de-sac with overgrown shrubs and an 8-foot storm drain entrance chained shut behind an old utility fence. By 9:12 p.m., Detective Harold Gutierrez from Missing Persons was en route. He described the early stage as eerily silent, no signs, no struggle, no trace. A neighbor on Drew Court remembered seeing a white van parked by the fence earlier that day, but she couldn't recall the license plate or make. Microcliff. The backpack wasn't there. Officers inspected the storm drain entrance. The chain was rusted, padlock intact. They lifted it with bolt cutters to peer inside. A flashlight beam danced off the concrete tunnel, but the space was dry, undisturbed, and empty. If he went in there, he would have had to crawl, Officer Lem said. But why would he? By 10:30 p.m., Miguel's face was printed on flyers and posted on telephone poles. No one knew it yet, but this would become one of the most baffling child disappearances in Los Angeles County history. Cliffhanger ending. At 2:43 a.m., a patrol officer reported something unusual on a sewer grate along Millhaven Drive. nearly half a mile off Miguel's path. A single Puma shoelace was tangled in the bars, dangling like it had been caught mid-air. By sunrise on Friday, October 10th, 2014, Langston Elementary no longer resembled a school. Overnight, its playground and staff parking lot had transformed into a mobile command post. Patrol units from the LAPD's Harbor Division arrived before dawn, along with search dogs, forensic technicians, and a satellite mapping unit. Folding tables were set up, and large whiteboards displayed maps, sectors, timestamps, and dozens of handwritten notes detailing routes, witness names, and terrain. Everyone on site knew the stakes. The first 48 hours after a child disappears are often the only chance to bring them back alive. Under the direction of Lieutenant Alana Brooks, the team deployed 3 concentric search zones across a 1.5-mile radius around Langston. Zone A covered the immediate residential blocks, sidewalks, lawns, fences. Zone B included garages, sheds, basements, and crawl spaces beneath older homes. Zone C focused on one thing: storm drains. Maintenance hatches, culverts, and sewer entrances were opened one by one, every access point cross-checked against city blueprints. Over 40 officers moved methodically, while 2 bloodhounds swept the school's perimeter. Each cleared location was marked with green tape and logged with a timestamp, but no trace of Miguel emerged. No dropped pencil, no torn paper, no scrap of clothing. It was like someone had lifted him clean off the sidewalk. Meanwhile, at the site where officers had found the shoelace the night before, dangling from the inside of a drainage grate on Millhaven Drive, a crime scene technician secured the area. The lace was carefully removed and sealed inside evidence bag 1A14C47. Preliminary visual inspection showed it matched Miguel's brand and model, Puma Velocity Youth, size 6.5. That alone wasn't enough to confirm it was his. But then a city utility worker pointed out something disturbing. The grate from which the shoelace had been hanging could not be opened from the outside. It bolted from within, which meant either someone had entered the storm drain system earlier that day, or someone had been down there for far longer. Radio chatter escalated as search teams worked their grids. On Sumner Avenue, officers followed up on the grainy footage recovered late the night before. A home security camera had captured a white blur moving down the sidewalk at 3:27 p.m., exactly 11 minutes after Miguel had left school. Technicians enhanced the image using Axon Vision Suite. It wasn't crystal clear, but they identified the silhouette of an older model white van, likely a late 1990s Ford E-Series. Same description as the van spotted by a neighbor the night before. Back at the school, another unsettling detail surfaced. Miguel's lunchbox had been found untouched inside his desk, still sealed. Inside was a wrapped sandwich and an unopened juice pouch, packed that very morning. That suggested Miguel had never returned to his classroom after lunch. He hadn't stopped to grab his things. Had he been pulled away? Had something forced him to leave the routine he'd followed every school day that year? By 3 p.m. that Friday, a regional Amber Alert was issued, spanning Los Angeles, Orange, and Ventura counties. Miguel's face began appearing across Southern California, flashing on freeway billboards, gas station monitors, and neighborhood watch apps. Television stations pushed breaking news banners. Social media posts were shared by the thousands. The hashtag #JudCharmFindMiguel trended for 16 hours. In every clip, Rosa Sanchez appeared under fluorescent lights, holding Miguel's school photo. Her voice rasped with exhaustion. "He always comes home," she said. "He doesn't run off. Somebody took my son." That evening, police completed 173 door-to-door interviews across the 3 zones. Only one resident reported anything strange, an elderly woman who said she'd heard a dragging sound from beneath the storm grate on Elmhurst Street the day before. "It wasn't an animal," she insisted. "It sounded metallic, like something heavy being pulled." Investigators examined the grate and found fresh scrape marks on the inside, signs of metal-on-metal contact, possibly a tool, possibly something being dragged through. The absence of blood, prints, or hair meant nothing. The storm drain remained silent. Around 10:30 p.m., the team returned to the first storm tunnel, where the shoelace had been recovered. This time, they brought a professional-grade snake camera. The line extended deep into the pipe, moving slowly past bends and debris. At roughly 43 feet in, the screen flickered. Something came into view, a piece of cloth, snagged and folded against a concrete curve. The light caught it for only a second before the feed cut to black. By the morning of Saturday, October 11th, the search for Miguel Sanchez had grown beyond the quiet streets of San Pedro. In just 2 days, the disappearance of the 11-year-old boy had stopped being a local mystery and started to feel like something deeper, something colder. He had walked out of school on a clear Thursday afternoon and vanished without a trace. The discovery of a single shoelace, hanging from the inside of a storm drain, grate that could only be accessed from within, offered more questions than answers. No one knew what it meant, only that it unsettled everyone who saw it. At 7 a.m., the Los Angeles Police Department officially expanded the search radius to just over 3 miles. The new perimeter covered the Palisades district, stretches of Gaffey Street, and even reached the abandoned grounds of Fort MacArthur, a decommissioned military installation full of boarded-up warehouses, crumbling stairwells, and underground shafts that hadn't been inspected in decades. That morning, the county sheriff's search and rescue unit arrived with 2 FLIR-equipped helicopters. They flew methodical grid patterns over rooftops, tree canopies, alleyways, and open fields, scanning for heat signatures. By noon, they had found nothing. From the ground, volunteers arrived in waves. Families, retirees, off-duty firefighters, even construction workers from nearby sites. One local contractor brought his company's ground-penetrating radar units, usually reserved for concrete analysis, and began scanning the fields near Langston Elementary. Everyone hoped the soil would give up something, a shape, a cavity, a clue. But the machines were silent. The ground held tight to its secrets. Back at the command post, now sprawling across the school's staff lot, detectives worked through incoming leads. A whiteboard marked "Unknown Van" filled quickly with sightings reported by residents. Most described a white Ford van, older model, parked or idling near playgrounds and alleyways on the afternoon Miguel disappeared. Some calls offered partial license plates. Most didn't. A few printed their own flyers with grainy photos pulled from stock images of vans. "If you saw this vehicle," they wrote, "call police." It felt like the entire neighborhood was chasing ghosts. News media began broadcasting from the scene by mid-afternoon. Satellite trucks lined the street. Aerial drones hovered. Every local channel ran updates on the half hour, flashing Miguel's face alongside phrases like "missing" and "possible abduction." He had become a headline, a hashtag, a symbol. At 1:45 p.m., one newscast summarized the facts. Miguel Sanchez, 11, disappeared Thursday while walking home from school, last seen on Glen Hill Avenue. A shoelace found in a storm drain half a mile away. Search grid expanded, community response growing. The footage looped across social media before the hour was out. From inside the school's multi-purpose room, the Sanchez family released a statement. Rosa spoke only briefly. Her message was direct. No more noise, no more drones, no more horns or shouting. "If my son is out there," she said, her voice thin and hoarse, "we need to hear him. We are listening." Still, there was nothing. No break-ins, no wreckage, no screams, no blood. Just the empty echo of absence. That afternoon, divers from the city's Municipal Water Bureau arrived to inspect key access points into the stormwater system. The tunnels beneath San Pedro were old, fragmented, and in many places undocumented. The man assigned to review the snake cam footage from the night before, a technician named Carlos Yun, watched the brief segment where the feed had flickered out. He rewound it twice before nodding. He said what everyone feared. The object caught in the concrete bend wasn't just cloth. It looked like a strap, something curved, structured, like the edge of a backpack. By 5 p.m., Carlos suited up. He entered the system from a retention vault more than 600 yards from the original grate on Millhaven Drive. He described the space as dry, layered in dust and broken concrete, with sediment thick along the walls. At one point, he reached a junction where 2 tunnels met. Along the right-hand curve, he found long, consistent scrape marks in the concrete. They weren't made by water. They weren't natural. Something had been dragged. But there was no bag, no contents, nothing else. Just the marks. He flagged the area for follow-up and surfaced. As daylight began to fade over the harbor, Detective Gutierrez received a call from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. A report had surfaced, filed 6 months earlier in Phoenix, Arizona, describing a man seen photographing school children from inside a white Ford van. No arrest had been made, no license plate had been confirmed, but the similarities were immediate: same vehicle type, same behavior, same pattern. Gutierrez requested the full file. By nightfall, the volunteers had thinned. The heat had broken. Dogs were resting under folding tables. Floodlights buzzed softly over the lawn where the search effort had begun 2 days prior. People were tired, and the tunnels still said nothing. Around 9:13 p.m., Rosa Sanchez stepped out into the dark for a moment of air. She passed the stack of water bottles, the cold pizza boxes, the blurred flyers flapping in the wind. Near the edge of the lawn, she stopped. The sprinklers had gone off minutes earlier, soaking the grass. And there, beneath a tree, lying heavy and wet in the mud, was a small rectangle of paper. She bent to pick it up. It was a school library slip, stamped with her son's name, and the date, October 9th, 2014. By Sunday, October 12th, the media no longer reported the search for Miguel Sanchez. They defined it. Every major outlet had arrived. The street in front of Langston Elementary turned into a broadcast corridor. Camera tripods lined the curb, satellite dishes rose above parked vans, and reporters rehearsed statements just steps away from crying relatives. News helicopters hovered above, even when the ground teams had paused, circling like birds over still water. Every whisper, every scrap of possibility, became the next headline. With attention came speculation. Internet threads filled with unvetted claims, armchair theories, and malicious guesswork. Hashtags split into factions, some pleading for support, others demanding accountability. In the eyes of the public, the case had moved beyond tragedy and entered myth. A boy vanishing into tunnels that no one had mapped, his lunch still uneaten, his shoelace appearing inside a locked drain. It didn't help when that morning, a woman named Shelley Kranz approached the media line and offered a tip. She was soft-spoken, wrapped in a fleece blanket, and said she lived in a duplex across from Sumner Avenue. Her statement came hesitantly. On the day Miguel vanished, she'd seen a man in a green jacket standing alone across the street, watching the children walk home. She hadn't thought anything of it at the time. But later, she saw the same man, she claimed, sitting in the back of a white van that turned onto Millhaven. She described the man as tall, white, with a twitch or tremor in his hand. She also mentioned, and insisted, that he had a little plastic dog. When asked by press if she meant a real dog or a toy, she paused. It barked, but didn't move. So, maybe both. Within an hour, local anchors were broadcasting the Green Jacket lead. Online, amateur sleuths dissected satellite views of Millhaven and Glen Hill, zooming in on anything remotely green. One composite sketch, entirely fabricated, was shared thousands of times, showing a generic male figure holding a leashed dachshund made of plastic. But when detectives visited Shelley's duplex, they found inconsistencies. Her view of the street was obstructed by hedges. Her timeline didn't align with Miguel's departure, and her mental health records, as confirmed by social services, suggested a pattern of fabricated incidents and false reports. Her statement was quietly dismissed. The damage, however, had already been done. That same afternoon, a different call came in, this one from an area east of Harborview Park. A man walking his dog had discovered something lodged inside a drainage culvert, a child's notebook. It was soaked but intact, wedged into a space beneath a steel grill. Emergency services sealed the area. The book was retrieved, tagged, and rushed for testing. Initial visual inspection confirmed what many feared. It matched the type issued at Langston Elementary. Inside, water-damaged ink revealed fragments of a name. The first 2 letters, M.I. But the pages had bloomed open with moisture, and the spine had collapsed. No other identifiers remained. It could have belonged to Miguel, or to any number of children in the neighborhood. Later that night, Rosa was briefed privately. She sat in the principal's office, the same office where her son once received a certificate for perfect attendance. Across the desk, a detective gently placed the notebook on a plastic tray. Rosa stared at it for nearly a minute before she spoke. "This isn't his," she said. "Miguel always signed the inside corner, with a star. This one has none." Outside, the storm drains ran silently. The next morning, Monday, October 13th, a caller phoned in from Ventura County, claiming to have seen a boy matching Miguel's description at a rest stop. The boy, they said, was sitting with a man in a wide-brimmed hat. eating French fries. But security footage showed a different child, a family from Arizona en route to San Diego. Another call came from Bakersfield. Someone had found a small backpack under an overpass, but it was pink, covered in glitter, and had belonged to a girl who lost it during a skate meetup the week before. False lead after false lead, each one flaring with hope, only to fade in silence. For the detectives, the saturation became almost worse than the void. So many images, so many shapes, none of them Miguel. And still, the drain system remained, dark, waiting. On Tuesday morning, October 14th, a city worker inspecting a clogged runoff tunnel behind an abandoned strip mall in South San Pedro radioed in. The blockage, he said, was organic but dry, something that looked like a mass of paper and cloth, partially wedged against a concrete fork. He was told not to move it. A forensic team was dispatched. The worker stayed behind, staring down into the tunnel's curve, before quietly adding, "It's zipped shut." The object recovered from the South San Pedro drainage fork on October 14th was not what anyone had expected, and that perhaps was the most haunting part of it. It was a backpack, child-sized, blue with a red zipper, intact. It was removed carefully by forensics and logged under item number 47MX2147. Inside were textbooks, a foil-wrapped sandwich, a juice pouch, and a spiral notebook with one corner torn off. Everything inside was clean, dry, and without a trace of blood, mud, or mold. It looked less like evidence and more like a child had set it down yesterday. Tests confirmed the items belonged to Miguel. Fingerprints matched. A faint penciled name, Miguel S., was found on the inside flap of the notebook, written in the corner, next to a small 5-pointed star. Rosa had been right, but the condition of the backpack made no sense. The tunnel it was found in hadn't been cleaned or accessed in over 4 years. City maintenance logs proved it. Yet there it was, perfectly preserved, as though time had paused. Cadaver dogs were brought in. The soil was drilled and cored, but there were no additional signs, no biological traces, no skeletal matter, no fabric fragments, not even disturbed sediment, just the backpack, tucked into a junction that required crawling 30 feet through a graded tunnel less than 3 feet high. No cameras caught who placed it there. No one had the key to time. And after that, nothing. By December, the leads slowed to a trickle. By February, the search budget was suspended. By spring, reporters stopped returning calls. The cameras vanished, the flyers faded, and the Sanchez family was left in a silence so vast it began to feel like a second disappearance. Year 1 passed with a vigil. Dozens gathered at Langston Elementary, holding candles and wearing blue ribbons, Miguel's favorite color. A string quartet played outside the school auditorium. Rosa stood at the microphone but didn't speak. She just held a photograph and nodded once before stepping back. Year 2 brought boxes. Case file MX4731 was archived. A metal cabinet filled with binders, evidence bags, and flash drives. Each was marked with a barcode. Some were already beginning to peel. Detectives were reassigned. Some left the department. Detective Gutierrez filed his final memo on the case in October 2016, titled simply, Status, Pending Viable Lead. In Year 3, Miguel's bedroom was converted into a guest room. Not out of grief, Rosa said, but necessity. Her sister moved in after a divorce. The Star Wars posters were rolled and stored. The toys were boxed. But the desk remained. She never touched the drawer where Miguel kept his notebooks, even when the handle broke. In Year 4, Rosa stopped attending interviews. Marco moved out of state. They separated quietly. No custody dispute. There was no child left to dispute over. Just a grief that had carved their lives into before and after. By Year 5, Miguel's name still lived, but only in small ways. In the corner of the school's library, a plaque read, Reading Corner, in honor of Miguel S. A teacher who'd once taught him named her newborn son Miguel. And on the wall of the South San Pedro substation, behind a bulletin board no longer updated, was a faded flyer, the original Amber Alert printout, sun-bleached and curling, but never removed. The case was still technically open, but everyone knew what that meant. No active leads, no suspects, just evidence in a cabinet and questions no one could ask without reopening the wound. Until the noise came back, comment, still looking. If you believe every case deserves more than a cabinet, share Miguel's name. Someone, somewhere, remembers something. On October 11, 2023, nearly 9 years to the day Miguel vanished, a new detective, reviewing legacy cold cases for digital archiving, flagged an anomaly in the storm drain records. The tunnel where Miguel's backpack had been recovered wasn't listed in the city's schematics at all. It didn't exist, not officially. 10 years had passed since Miguel Sanchez left school and never came home. What began as a neighborhood mystery had stretched into a slow erosion of truth, the kind that doesn't collapse all at once, but instead falls away grain by grain. In the beginning, there had been searches, scanners, helicopters, vigils, and endless grids drawn in red ink. Then came the lull, the cold shelving of case MX-4731, the filing cabinets, the peeled barcodes, the boxed flyers stacked behind forgotten desks. But time is stubborn, and silence has a way of circling back. It was an archivist who noticed it first, a missing line on a city map, a tunnel where a tunnel wasn't supposed to be, a place where Miguel's backpack had been found years earlier, dry and undamaged, tucked into the curve of an abandoned drain. A tunnel, it turned out, that did not exist on any city schematics. No paperwork, no blueprints, just concrete and silence. The backpack had changed everything. It had been too clean, too whole, as if untouched by time or weather, sealed in place like an object in amber. The sandwich was still wrapped, the juice pouch unpierced, the notebook's corner signed in pencil, Miguel S., beside a small 5-pointed star. A message from a boy long since vanished, but there had been no signs of Miguel, no DNA, no body, no evidence of violence or struggle, just absence. When the tunnel was re-examined in 2023, it was sealed. A flat slab of concrete poured over its entrance behind an abandoned strip mall in South San Pedro, painted over, forgotten. The city claimed no record of the closure. The maintenance division had never signed off on it. There were no permits, no order numbers. When pushed, one department quietly admitted that the lot had been sold to a private holding company years earlier, a shell firm with no accessible board or address. A detective named Daniel Miles took over the file. He came from cybercrime, new to missing persons, immune to the emotional weight most officers inherited from the Sanchez case. He looked at the records like code, something inconsistent, something that didn't compile. And what he found was chilling. In the weeks before Miguel vanished, a short-lived utility subcontractor had been operating under temporary permits near the school. See, they had dug, poured, diverted water flow, all signed off by a temp administrator who later resigned. The company's name, Cordance Utilities, dissolved just a year later. Their invoices never closed. Nothing in what Miles uncovered proved criminal intent. There were no fingerprints, no suspects, no confessions. But something else had become obvious, that the tunnel was no accident. Someone built it, someone sealed it, and someone, deliberately or carelessly, left behind the backpack of a missing boy inside its walls. There was no headline, no indictment, no closing press conference. Rosa Sanchez never stood before a microphone. Marco never returned to Los Angeles. The family issued no statement, but the air shifted. For years, the narrative had been frozen in place. A boy who vanished without explanation. Now, there was an explanation, or rather, the outline of one. Not complete, not satisfying, but real. People began to visit the storm drain, first in silence, then with candles. Some left paper cranes, others brought blue shoelaces. A chalk message appeared on the wall near the sealed entrance. He walked home. You paved over the path. A year later, the city quietly removed the concrete and replaced it with a steel grate. Not for reopening, but for visibility. A plaque was placed nearby, small and brushed metal. It read, "In memory of Miguel Sanchez, 2003, missing since 2014. Not forgotten, never erased. The case remains officially unsolved, but everyone knows what happened. Some disappearances are acts of violence, others are accidents, but the most painful are the ones created by systems, silent machinery, bureaucratic blindness, and people who look the other way. Miguel wasn't just lost. He was misfiled, covered, forgotten, and all it would have taken was one person to look at the map and ask, why is this tunnel here?